In the world of big bucks, there are three constants: food, cover, and does. If you want to find that huge buck in the fall, you better figure out a way to keep the ladies happy.
The does that live on your property, they are your best friends.
Hey guys, it's all about the girls.
I'm Steve Bartella.
I'm Gordy Cron.
I'm Mark Kaiser.
I'm Dan Schmidt, and this is Deer and Deer Hunting TV.
You can put in hours of work, create deer utopia, and offer everything a whitetail could want. But if you don't have the does, you're probably not seeing the bucks.
In recent years, if we've really been tracking management, it has been just pounded into our heads. You have to kill those, you have to kill those, you have to kill those. They've almost been made out to be the enemy. They are not. They are the buck hunter's best friends. Those does that live on your ground, they keep Mr. Big occupied there.
What you need to understand here is a doe's home range is much smaller than a buck's home range. So if you have a big mature doe on your property, especially if you have a small property, you want to leave her alone. If you're going to harvest some does, you're going to want to go after the younger age classes. Yearling does are perfect because they're going to disperse anyways. But if you have 3-, 4-year-old does, you're not going to know the age. You're just going to know you have a mature doe on your property. Leave her alone. She's going to be there. She's not going anywhere.
You know, it's not rocket science. If you're going to want to find the bucks in the fall, especially during the periods of the rut, you need to know where the does are. You need to hunt the does. It's not a lot different than those college bars. What's the first thing they do? They have ladies' night. They draw the ladies in. What happens? Then the guys come too. It's not a lot different with deer. You have to manage for does. You need to set up your stands for does, because where those does are, the bucks will follow.
If you're watching TV, it's just buck hunt after buck hunt after buck hunt. Frankly, when you see doe hunts, it's because they didn't kill enough bucks the year before. No, that's not reality. Reality is if you want to kill great bucks on your ground, you have to pay attention to those does. You pay attention to them, you give them everything they need, and the bucks fall into place. I manage ground as part of my living. You know, a dirty little secret? I don't focus on creating buck bedding. I don't focus on creating buck habitat. I focus on creating doe habitat, because if you create ideal doe habitat, the bucks fall in line. What do you need to get deer to spend a disproportionate amount of time on your ground? You supply them with the best food, the best cover, the best water, the best feeling of security and comfort and breeding opportunities that they can get within that overall area. They're going to spend a disproportionate amount of time on your ground. If you do that for does, the bucks fall into place. There's all sorts of information out there about going ahead and building doe factories. You know, if you do this wrong, you do that wrong, you'll have all these does, you won't have any bucks. You know what? That is pure flat out baloney. You give those does everything they want, you're giving Mr. Big everything he wants too.
Deer and Deer Hunting Television is brought to you by Matthews Archery. Catch us if you can. Carbon Express. Shoot better with Carbon Express. Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry technology. Apply, dry it, and go hunt. By the Muck Pursuit Shadow, the lightest weight hunting boot on the market. And by Nikon, the next generation of hunting optics. Coming up next.
When you're talking to other land managers out there, reading the information, the resources, relying on them, what you hear over and over is bucks, 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 bucks. you cannot ignore the doe portion of the equation. You want to see big bucks this fall? You better keep the girls happy. You're watching Deer and Deer Hunting Television.
If you talk to a hunter, rarely do they say they are patterning their land for does, but that's exactly what you should be doing.
How do you prepare your land to have does on it and to keep does on it? It's food, cover, security. To keep them secure, how do you make them secure? Make them secure by leaving them alone, especially, again, if you have a small property. If you have 40 acres or less, you don't want to be pounding a lot of does off of there. You want to leave them alone. Get them a sanctuary within the middle of that property or somewhere that they're not going to wander off onto the neighbors and get shot during gun season.
I'm not a deer manager, I'm a deer hunter. I hunt mostly through observation. So when I'm scouting, when I'm in my stands, that's when I'm looking for does and I'm trying to figure out what the does are doing, where they're going. I'm doing this all through observation. So it's an ongoing process with me during the season. Since I'm not a land manager, I'm not out building things to draw deer in, I have to go out into my hunting areas and figure out what the deer are doing on their own.
You want a classic example of what a happy doe will do for your buck hunting? Here I've got a doe that is right on the edge of estrus. That's out on the edge of my food plot. She is happy, she is healthy, and she smells just perfect. And there is this gorgeous 3.5-year-old 9-point that will not leave her alone. He is trying to corral her and keep her to himself. But you know what? She's not going where he wants her to. One of the bigger myths, everybody thinks that, man, when there's a doe in estrus, she's leading Mr. Big all over. You know what? Once Mr. Big has claimed that doe, that could not be further from the truth. It's actually the buck that's trying to push that doe into a location where he feels secure. Well, this girl doesn't want to go. So he's jumping at her and stomping at her, trying to get her to go in the direction he wants, and she won't move. So he must have spent 10 minutes dogging this doe right out in front of me. And the whole time I'm sitting there smiling, going like this, because she smells right. And when she smells right, you can bet every buck that's not with a doe in the area that gets a downwind whiff, he's gonna come in and check this out. So that 4.5-year-old runt-bodied 10-point that smells her, he comes out and he decides he wants to steal this girl. And that 9-point and that 10-point, they go at it. I'm talking knockdown, roll, drag out, nasty fight. There was a couple times, quite honestly, that I almost shot up in the air just to break them apart. But the 9-point won. He went off with his doe, and that 10-point came back out again and gave me the perfect shot. Bat. 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 He's got a 3.5-year-old body. He's got a 2.5-year-old rack. But frankly, I'm thrilled. He's just a good, solid deer, but he's never going to amount to being just humongous. But if I had not been taking care of the girls, she wouldn't have been there, she wouldn't have smelled right, and she wouldn't have created that little feeding frenzy.
Up next.
All bets are off. It's time to put some meat in the freezer. We have a doe down. It's a glorious day, and we just got started.
You know, back in high school when the guy would do anything for the pretty girl? It's no different than with a buck. You're watching Deer and Deer Hunting TV. You know, I hear this a lot from people. They say, oh, my property only has a few bucks on it, or my property is only home to does. That's nonsense. Your property is home to deer. If you have the right things in place, you're gonna have deer. And if you have deer, you're gonna have an equal proportion of bucks and does. You might not see them all the time, or you might be seeing does all the time because you're hunting it wrong.
When you're managing your land, you need to provide the nutrients, the food that'll draw these deer in. Draw them from the surrounding areas. Draw them in from your neighbors. It's all about putting the right banquet in front of the deer.
Well, here's a prime example of how it should work if you got everything going for you. This particular property, lots of deer, ample opportunities to fill some doe tags. And you know, don't be afraid, if you're gonna shoot some does while you're buck hunting, don't be afraid to do it out of the same stand. A doe is a doe if you're on that property, and if you're targeting the ones you want to target, the younger age classes, doesn't matter when you take them.
Opening day of Illinois gun season. It's a beautiful morning. It's cold, it's clear, no wind. We're looking over a nice food plot here. Looks good. First one. That's how you make venison in Illinois. Big, beautiful doe. It's first light. We haven't seen anything. She came in with a little buck. Isn't that pretty the way she's just trotting in the sunlight like that? You know what I love about gun season? All bets are off. It's time to put some meat in the freezer. We have a doe down. It's a glorious day. And we just got started.
If you set your property up to cover all your bases, then you're going to keep does on. There's no one thing that you can do to say, oh, I'm going to have more does bedding on my property or feeding on my property. It's a combination. Food plots, outer edges, good idea. It's going to draw those deer in. And then the inner edges of your property, have nice prime bedding areas if you can, and then stay out of there. If you have a small property, you're only hunting a small portion of that property throughout the year, and you're leaving the rest of that as utopia. Let the deer have that be their home.
Dan Schmidt is in Illinois. It's the start of the gun season, and he's already taken a nice doe.
That is a beautiful doe.
With the morning already a success, Dan decides from the don't change from what works philosophy to hunt the same stand in the evening. Shortly after getting into that stand, through the thick brush of central Illinois, Dan spots movement on the edge of a food plot. It's a beautiful 8-pointer, and it's coming directly toward Dan's stand.
Big, beautiful 8-pointer. Yes. The rut is absolutely rocking. Hang on a second.
A doe in the morning, a great buck in the afternoon. That's what great land management is all about. To get the boys to come out, you have to keep the ladies happy.
What a nice buck. Look at this. Is it
dandy 8-pointer. Dandy 8-pointer. He is pretty, holy mackerel. Nice tines. You know, that's exactly what we were here for. Just a really pretty 8-pointer. Holy cow. Yes.
Coming up next, perfecting your setup in Growing Big and what you should be doing right now to get ready for the season. This is Deer and Deer Hunting TV. Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by Mossberg. Built rugged, proudly American. By Cuddyback, more deer, fewer blanks. Hunter's Safety System, saving lives is what we do. By Analogics, protect your herd with the power of science. And by Block Vault, get locked in. Perfect your setup and growing big. Here's Steve Bartilla.
One of the big questions is whether or not we need to shoot does on a property. Hey, for the last 10 years or so, it's just been hammered into our heads, kill does, kill does, kill does, kill does. Well, you know what? Lots of situations you don't want to. As a matter of fact, some of them, you're being your own worst enemy if you shoot those does. Hey, so how do you decide whether or not you need to kill does on your property? Okay, the first thing you do is you get out there and you inspect your habitat. The habitat is what determines whether or not you need to kill does. If your habitat's being destroyed, you know what? You need to increase the food production and reduce the deer population. How do you reduce the deer population? You shoot does. I want to have about 10% of my food plot material left over come spring. I'm talking grains and brassicas, cereal rye. That tells me that, you know what, they had enough food over winter. At the same time, I want to inspect the habitat. I want there to be at least 20% of the prime browse species, woody browse species, available come spring. How do you figure out what prime woody browse is? You get out there and you inspect the habitat. The deer will tell you. Go out there, look at the habitat. What are the deer browsing on heavily? That's your prime browse species. What are the deer not browsing on? You know what? That's a bad browse species. If you get to the point where they start browsing on that, you've got problems. If you don't have 20% of the very best browse species that is nice and easy to get to for the deer still available, you have too many deer. When it comes to shooting does, I want to shoot those does first that are bedding on the neighbors and feeding on me. They're evil. They are evil because they are tempting Mr. Big when they're in estrus to leave my property. She goes ahead, she comes in the middle of the night, she feeds, she's on the cusp of estrus, she leaves, 8 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Big is scent checking, runs across her trail, and you know what? He's gonna jump that fence over the neighbors and he's gonna spend probably the next day or two over there dealing with her. Those does that are in the center of my property, the ones that bed and feed on my ground, they're my best friends. They keep Mr. Big interested and active on my ground. There's advantages to shooting does. The advantages actually comes in hunting. The tighter those buck-doe ratios are, the harder those bucks have to work to find those breeding opportunities. The more they fight, the more they rub and scrape, the more they're dogging that property looking for does. That's all great for hunting. At the same time, that's also bad for deer management. When you're managing bucks, when you're trying to grow the biggest buck that property can, that is very high stress levels on Mr. Big. When you watch two truly equally matched bucks go at it, it is an epic brawl. It is life or death. That is very, very hard on those bucks. Okay. Spending all that extra time searching for does, all of that drains their energy. And in the Midwest and points north, you know what? They're about to come into winter.
Deer Talk is brought to you by the Barnett BC Raptor Reverse Crossbow. See what's causing the uproar.
So how many times does this happen to you? You're in your tree stand, you're looking down, you're looking away, all of a sudden you look in front of you and there's a deer standing there. It just showed up out of nowhere. 2 more steps and that deer is in the brush. Hey, it's now or never. Let's get up in the stand and practice this real life hunting situation. I'm not hunting, I'm only practicing, so I don't need to wear a safety harness, right? Wrong, you always need to wear a safety harness and always use a lifeline climbing to and from your stand. You never know, accidents can happen at any time. Three key steps. Bow comes up, release goes on the string, acquire the target, come to full draw, pin there, boom. You can do it that fast. Real life practice means, duplicate everything that you would do in the woods. Do you normally shoot standing up? Do you normally shoot sitting down? I normally shoot sitting down, so that's what I practice. It doesn't really help me to practice standing up if I really take a standing up shot. If you practice as a quick draw, you can become a deadly shot on these quartering away shots and the broadside shots. The ones I would never recommend is anything quartering to you, especially on a quick draw. A quick draw, you're not going to be hitting dimes. You're going to be hitting the kill zone, and you're going to kill a lot of deer, but you want that deer quartering away or broadside. Once you know the steps, just practice it. It's going to come fast and easy.
Be sure to check deer and deer hunting out online and on Facebook.